7. The land and the poor. Because the earth is the Lord's, he is the lawgiver thereof. Laws are therefore given, not only to govern the use of the land, but to govern the use of its harvests. The poor are thus to be cared for by those who have the means to do so. The major laws in this respect are the following. And when ye reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not wholly reap the corners of the field, neither shalt thou gather the gleanings of thy harvest. And thou shalt not glean thy vineyard, neither shalt thou gather every grape of thy vineyard. Thou shalt leave them for the poor and stranger. I am the Lord your God. Leviticus chapter 19, verses 9 and 10. And if thy brother be waxen poor and fallen in decay with thee, then thou shalt relieve him, yea, though he be a stranger or a sojourner, that he may live with thee. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 35. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, a great God, a mighty and a terrible, which regardeth not persons, nor taketh reward. He doth execute the judgment of the fatherless and widow, and loveth the stranger, in giving him food and raiment. Love ye therefore the stranger, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verses 17 to 19. At the end of 3 years thou shalt bring forth all the tithe of thine increase the same year, and shalt lay it up within thy gates. And the Levite, because he hath no part nor inheritance with thee, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow, which are within thy gates, shall come, and shall eat and be satisfied, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the work of thine hand which thou doest. Deuteronomy chapter 14, verses 28 and 29. If there be among you a poor man of one of thy brethren within any of thy gates in thy land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not harden thine heart, nor shut thine hand from thy poor brother, but thou shalt open thine hand wide unto him, and shalt surely lend him sufficient for his need, in that which he wanteth. Beware that there be not a thought in thy wicked heart, saying, The 7th year, the year of release is at hand, and thine eye be evil against thy poor brother, and thou givest him naught, and he cry unto the Lord against thee, and it be sin unto thee. Thou shalt surely give him, and thine heart shall not be grieved when thou givest unto him, because that's for this thing the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thy works, and in all that thou puttest thine hand unto. For the poor shall never cease out of the land. Therefore I command thee, saying, Thou shalt open thine hand wide unto thy brother, to thy poor, and to thy needy in the land. Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 7 to 11. When thou cuttest down thine harvest in thy field, and hast forgot a sheaf in thy field, thou shalt not go again to fetch it. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the work of thine hands. When thou beatest thine olive tree, thou shalt not go over the boughs again. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. When thou gatherest the grapes of thy vineyard, thou shalt not glean it afterward. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in the land of Egypt. Therefore I command thee to do this thing. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 19 to 22. These laws give us various case law examples of the necessary care and concern for the poor. The implication is clear that failure to observe these laws is robbing the poor. At no point does the law say that the poor are entitled to our gleaning, but at no point does the law allow us to assume that we are entitled to our harvest or our production. We are God's servants, living in or on God's land, and He therefore is entitled to tell us how to use our harvest. Another point is of note. The poor are not simply the believing poor. They include strangers and sojourners, aliens either residing in their midst or simply passing through. The terms thus include all such men, irrespective of their faith. On the other hand, the poor cannot walk in and take what they will. There was no license given to anyone to live off of successful neighbours. These are the needy and deserving poor whom God has in mind, and widows and orphans are specifically named to indicate the kind of need which gleaning should meet. Gleaners went into a field by permission, and by permission only. Maimonides commented, "Labourers are forbidden to harvest the entire field and must leave the proper amount of corner crop at the end of it. The poor people, however, have no title to the corner crop until the owner, of his own will, explicitly sets it apart as such. Therefore, a poor man who sees corner crop at the end of a field is forbidden to touch it on pain of being charged with robbery until it becomes known to him that it is such by the will of the owner." The meaning of these laws is set forth by Paul in his statement, "For we are members one of another." This means that our membership in one another is required by God. This is a membership in a double sense. Paul, in this statement, refers to our neighbour, Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25. He uses the word in the sense of Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18, and Matthew chapter 22, verse 39. "Thou shalt love thy neighbour as thyself." It cannot be limited to our fellow believer. Thus, in the first sense, we are all members one of another, as the seed of Adam. Second, we have another membership, as fellow members in Christ. We are to meet human needs in terms of both memberships. Status charity is divisive because it stresses membership or citizenship in an impersonal entity, the state. There is no sense of obligation or gratitude with respect to an impersonal relationship. I am grateful to my wife for her constant helpfulness, but I do not express thanks to my bed. It is an impersonal fact and object which is there to meet my needs. Impersonal charity engenders no thankfulness on the whole, and it does tend to foster a sense of expectation, of a right to be provided for, not a sharing by a member person. Status charity is productive of social disaster. Godly charity leads to a unifying and healing in society, a growth in communion. It is, moreover, to be personal. It includes communion with Him, Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 29, because we are to be one people in the Lord. Most of all, it furthers our communion with God, who tells us plainly that He will bless us. From New Testament times, the Church cares for the poor. Jesus and His disciples provided for the poor with the gifts they received. Judas was the treasurer, John chapter 13, verse 29, and he was also a thief, John chapter 12, verses 4 to 6. The early church had collections for the needy saints. 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 1, Romans chapter 15, verse 26, Acts chapter 11, verse 29. The office of deacon had been created to meet such needs within the church. Acts chapter 6, verses 1 to 6. To provide order, very early the pastor, and later the bishop, supervised this ministry, and money and properties were accumulated to make it possible. The origins of charitable trusts and foundations thus go back to the early church. The reason for so ordering the relief to the poor was to prevent anyone from exploiting the matter by applying to several members for help and gaining more than his share. The scriptural justification for giving the pastor or bishop control of charity was found in Titus chapter 1, verse 8. The presbyter or bishop must be a man who is a lover of hospitality, ever ready to care for those who need attention. He was thus to lead in the care of the needy. In 579 AD, St. Augustine of Canterbury wrote to Pope Gregory to ask about the proper use of the tithes and offerings of the faithful. The Venerable Bede, in his Ecclesiastical History of the English Nation, gives us Gregory's answer. Holy Writ, which no doubt you are well versed in, testifies, and particularly St. Paul's epistle to Timothy, wherein he endeavours to instruct him how he should behave himself in the house of God. But it is the custom of the Apostolic See to prescribe rules to bishop newly ordained, that all emoluments which accrue are to be divided into 4 portions, one for the bishop and his family, because of hospitality and entertainments, another for the clergy, a third for the poor, and a fourth for the repair of churches. Thus, very early the poor were cared for in a very considerable manner. This had deep roots in the early church. Canon 80 of the First Council of Nicaea, 325 AD, called for a procurator of the poor in every town. He could be either a layman or a clergyman. It was his duty to care for the sick and for those in prison. If any were unjustly in prison, it was his duty to work for their liberation. Thus, he provided food, clothing, and legal defence. Later, relief for prisoners of war was added to his duties. The care of the poor was so seriously regarded that St. Cyril of Jerusalem actually sold church treasures to provide for poor relief. Like incidents occurred over the centuries, as well as personal concern and hospitality to the needy. The development of hospitals was an aspect of this ministry. As soon as the persecution of the early church ended, the building of hospitals began. Housing for travellers was also maintained and later became an adjunct of churches and monasteries. Both rich and poor were welcomed, and both received a Christian witness before continuing their journey. The Church from the days of Basil the Great called for tax exemption for such facilities. Houses for lepers were also established. It is a significant fact that again and again statist tyranny has struck first at such ministries of the Church, precisely because the care of the poor and needy has served to establish communion and community of a very extensive and strong character. Such ministries have been attacked before the Church itself. Before the time of either Luther or Henry VIII, the states of Europe were often seizing such institutions in order to further their own purposes. The destruction of such ministries undercut the life of communion and community. It rendered both the Lord's table and the service of worship rootless in the life of people. Faith without works is dead. Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 to 20, Romans chapter 3, verse 31, James chapter 2, verses 14 to 26. The goal of the modern humanistic state is, of course, to succeed the Church as the community of man.